Located in the Fertile Crescent between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, in the historical region of Mesopotamia, once lived the ancient city of Babylon 4,000 years ago. A city greatly coveted, ruined over battles for its wealth. Today, many of the ancient legends have become mysteries. The Hanging Gardens, one of the seven wonders of the world, and the Tower of Babel are both held in question. Were they mere legend? These ancient stories of the treasures of Babylon live on, tempting and inspiring the minds of today's rulers as they have through the thousands of years. Today, Babylon stands in ruins, but Babylon has contributed greatly to the world, from the Code of Hammurabi, the architectural contributions of King Nebuchadnezzar II, to the death of Alexander the Great, marking the beginning of the end for this great city, eventually to be abandoned and left for the tides of time to bury it in the sands. Rediscovered through archaeological digs, Babylon became a place of colonial looting. Large sections of its walls were shipped off to foreign places to be encased in museums or sold on the market. Saddam Hussein recognized it as a city to tie his legacy to, although he fell far short of it being a story of success, damaging much of the ancient city before his death in 2003. The U.S. also had a hand in the destruction of the ancient ruins, using it as their headquarters for a never-ending war that seemed destined to be lost. Considered to this day a great city of world importance, the question is asked, why did Babylon remain in the imaginations of so many over these thousands of years? A look at a few artistic images might provide some answers. Babylon has captured the imagination of artists for thousands of years. Its earliest origins are little known, first appearing in text at the end of the 3rd millennium BC, and then rose to prominence in the 18th century BC, as told through ancient artifacts, historical and biblical text. From the coins of Alexander the Great of the 4th century BC, to the later biblical accounts in the book of Daniel of the Jews in exile, to images of the Tower of Babel as told in the book of Revelation, we can explore the influence the rise and fall of Babylon has had on world culture. A city whose name Babelim means the gate of gods, to its later Hebrew translation meaning confusion, we can see the religious world's transformation through Babylon's fate as told in these following allegorical works of art, such as this 15th century woodcut print titled The Whore of Babylon by the artist Albrecht Dürer. Dürer's life coincided with the violent advent of the Protestant Reformation in Germany where he lived. An avid supporter of a new German Bible and a new path to salvation, Dürer's art reflected his Protestant beliefs, abandoning the depiction of popular saints. Babylon had been abandoned for 2,000 years by Dürer's time, but the Babylon of biblical text was widely familiar thanks in large part to the advent of the Gutenberg press in the 15th century. This print, a gruesome and quite literal presentation of Revelation 17:5, reads, I saw a woman on a scarlet beast, which was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. Fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling for demons, a haunt for the unclean spirit. The book of Revelations and the city of Babylon became very popular with its predictions of violence and turmoil during Dürer's life. The year 1500 was approaching, a year many believed the world would end, a fitting attitude for this Dürer depiction of Babylon. This vibrantly inked 16th century print was created by Flemish artist Jan Snellink. It's titled The Building of the Tower of Babel. This is another example of artistic expression of biblical text created during the 150 years of bloody Protestant conflict. Again, the subject of Babylon is used as a warning for greedy independence, reflecting the way the Bible described Babylon. This next plate, titled The Confusion of Tongues, is a second in the series of Snellink, issuing Babylon its judgment as found in Genesis. The Babylon of biblical legend was seen by the newly formed Protestants as a city of excess and of prideful people who fell to their desires on earth. But why was Babylon described in the Bible as such a sinful place? Perhaps explanations can be found in the historical records of Babylon. The Babylonian Empire under King Hammurabi of the 3rd millennial BC created the first code of laws in the world, an ironic beginning to a city that later is described as fallen to lawlessness and chaos. But it is the progress of King Hammurabi that built the city into the largest city in the world, at its peak reaching 200,000 people. Thousands of years later, Babylon, having undergone glory and collapse, was brought to its height under King Nebuchadnezzar II in 586 BC, when he sacked the city of Jerusalem and forced many of the Jews to a life of exile in Babylon, as seen in this William Blake painting titled "By the Waters of Babylon." This historical event, called the Babylonian Captivity, was written into the Hebrew Bible in Lamentations of the Sorrows of the Jews. It is this biblical perspective, along with the further world conquests led by the Babylonian Empire, that created the Babylonian legend we know of today. Many world leaders saw Babylon's empire as a covetous position in the world, a city that future dictators and men of outsized egos would emulate. We see this emulation directly carried out in this commissioned piece by Louis XIV. This etching, from the oil on canvas painting by Charles Le Brun in 1665, is titled "The Triumph of Alexander." The subject matter is of Alexander the Great triumphantly entering the gates of Babylon to a hero's welcome. He holds a scepter topped with victory while standing in a chariot led by elephants as an army. The symbolism in this painting is rich with meaning. A propaganda piece, this was one of 4 commissioned paintings by Louis XIV, who compared himself to Alexander as a legend in his own lifetime, asserting his military strength to enforce his absolute monarchy. The wealth of Babylon is clear in Le Brun's work, where we see the hanging gardens of Babylon in the background, men carrying a large golden vase, and Alexander himself wrapped in gold, the fantasy of many men of hubris. Monarchs and dictators to follow also saw the prowess of ancient Babylon and its rulers as inspirational, as seen in the Babylon of Iraq's recent history. In the 1980s, during the Iran-Iraq War, Saddam Hussein became obsessed with the Babylonian ruler Nebuchadnezzar II. Saddam saw himself as a modern reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, and to prove it, he spent millions building a massive reconstruction of Babylon. When Saddam heard that Nebuchadnezzar had stamped the bricks of ancient Babylon with his name and titles, he ordered to have his stamp imprinted on the bricks of the reconstruction. To this day, scores of bricks are stamped with his own declaration. Saddam wanted every Iraqi to know that he built Babylon, but it wasn't an archaeological reconstruction for the sake of Babylon's historical past. Instead, it was done to ensure he was recognized as the supreme ruler, another vanity project for the megalomaniac. UNESCO removed Babylon from the World Heritage List shortly thereafter. Saddam Hussein made a theme park out of Babylon in his reconstruction of 1987, destroying much of the ancient ruins by building on top of them rather than restoring. At the end of his reign, the ego-driven reconstruction stopped. When the U.S. President Bush ordered U.S. forces to invade Iraq in 2003, they occupied Babylon and turned Saddam's castle into their command center. The military caused immense damage to the site, looting precious artifacts and running tanks over treasured ancient ruins. Today, Babylon seems to fall between picnic site and abandoned theme park. Teenagers wander among Saddam-era walls and Nebuchadnezzar-era bricks. Babylon was once one of the most powerful cities in the world, leading those with enterprising ideas to battle for its dominion. Each conquest left its mark on the city. Babylon didn't really belong to one culture as a result, but instead became a city of rich diversity over thousands of years. The great city of Babylon was a place of the past. The legends still hold its grandeur and its demise intact. It is a sad story to me, after so many have come and gone from this place, leaving behind the ruins of a time for us today to decide whose memory lives on.